here we are. Yeah.
Hey.
Jonas and Rich and me. Feels good to be
Yeah.
together. Yes, Jonas?
No, I was just going to say welcome. We have gathered here to talk about leadership and challenges with leadership. I was just sharing offline with Rich and Jocelyn that I'm really excited because I like talking to both of them about these topics, and especially this topic has been really live for me recently, so I'm like buzzing.
Yes, and the topic is, today's topic is power, holding power with integrity. And yeah, it's something we've, I think, all been circling around and developing our thoughts about a lot recently. So I really like the concept of these Hum Insider conversations being an opportunity for us to bring the conversations that we've been having out into the open. And I think, Rich, you're a bit more familiar with the tech here. Is there an opportunity for people to do a Q&A, like share their questions as we're speaking today?
Yeah, it's awesome if people can drop any questions or comments as they're following along with us, because then we can interact with you and make this conversation not just enjoyable for the three of us, but relevant to everyone that's out there watching as well.
Yes.
Cool.
Jonas, you had this phrase, power with integrity. I think it was you that came up with that. And it just has the feeling of there's a lot behind that, those three words.
Yeah.
Do you want to unpack a little bit about what that is?
Happy to. Actually, it's 4 words. It's holding power with integrity. And yeah, maybe it's useful to just look at what do all these words mean? What do we mean when we say power, for example? And the way it's alive in me is like, there's different kinds of power, but basically it's like potential action, potential change, potential that can realize itself in the world. There can be relational power in our connections with other people and the trust we have in each other. And that enables us to have more agency in the world. There can be power that comes through experience. Like I have the power to fix my car if I if I have experience with that. I don't need to rely on someone else. There's like things like money or just recognition, public recognition, that can be kinds of power. And then there's more soft kinds of power, which I like have something to do with being able to tell a compelling story to people of why doing something is meaningful, and helping them in their learning and development. And aligning different people's actions towards one shared goal. And holding power means like acknowledging the power you have, not dismissing it, actually looking towards it, being like, oh, okay, like where is my power? How, what can I do? How can I kind of assert influence over others? And can I cultivate that capacity? And then with integrity just means doing that in a way, like holding your power in a way that is true to your values and what you like most deeply care about. Because often it can be easy to be like, no, I don't want this power, or to hold it with intentions that are maybe questionable under some categories, or that don't lead to like more possibilities in the future, that are maybe a bit selfish or narrowly focused. And maybe you like, sometimes it happens to me that I do that, not out of a bad intention, but just because I'm not aware of, oh, that's what's happening right now. There's like a deep-seated motivation that's driving me to do this thing that I'm not seeing. So my rational mind comes up with all the reasons why it's good, but actually it's out of integrity with who I truly am. If I'm in my kind of most clear and open-hearted and present state. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about what it means to me to hold power with integrity. It's to acknowledge the capacity I have for making things happen in the world with others, and do that in the most kind of heart-centered way possible. Curious if this already brings up any more connection points for one of you. Anything you want to add? Something that's alive around this phrase?
You've got something, Rich?
I've always got something.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm just thinking about how it's kind of paradoxical, or it's a puzzle that can't really be solved in some way. So like, we're live streaming on Twitter right now, and I know I've been in Twitter gatherings where the conversation about power comes up, where people get irritated. How do I describe the irritation? It's like we're kind of pretending that everyone's equal here, but clearly some people have outsized influence. And so it's like, yeah, it's really irritating. Not just irritating, but it can feel, it can feel unsafe, or it can feel like I'm at risk of being manipulated if there's a sort of surface layer that says we're all equal and we're just humans getting along with each other. But then you can see like there's 10% of the people in this group, if they speak, everyone listens, if they suggest something, then that suggestion is much more likely to go ahead than anyone else. And that can be, difficult, uncomfortable, painful to sort of feel that contrast. And so for me, holding power I'm often in that 10%. Like that's part of my personality, and the life that I've constructed for myself is I want to be in that powerful place. I've got that. Partly the ego drive, the hunger to be influential, and partly just the personality type and the desire for service as well. It's like this mixed jumble of impulses in me. And so for me to hold power with integrity, a big part of it is being transparent and saying, hi, I'm part of the 10%. I acknowledge that it's easier for me to feel included in this group than for a lot of other people. It's easier for me to get my voice heard. It's easier, like I'm playing on an easier level than a lot of people. But then why I say it's paradoxical is like, even the acknowledgement of power can also disorient people and activate their defense mechanisms and make them feel like, wait, are you trying to manipulate me? Because now you're like going against the norms of, usually we just sweep this stuff under the rug and try and get on with it. So it's not at all straightforward about like, how do you hold your power with any kind of grace and not be arrogant and prideful and neither disowning it or pretending, like making the story about how we're all the same, when obviously in any group people have different capacities in any context that they're in. And there's some groups where I'm going to be more empowered, and there's other groups I go into where I'm definitely on the back foot and in the margins. So yeah, I guess I'm entering the conversation just feeling the complexity and the paradox of it, and enthusiastic about hanging out with my two homies here and just thinking it through together, rather than expecting any like clean solutions.
I love that. I have a few ideas bubbling up, and there's something around like power and story. Like there's like the objective subjective thing, like Jonas, you started off by talking about all these different forms of power. Like someone in one context might have a lot of relational power, but in another context much less. For example, if there's a pregnant woman and she's going to hang out with a lot of people who are doing like very physical, like a lot of physical activity, is like she's not going to be able to easily fit in or keep up with everybody. But if she's in a circle of people who are talking about birthing and motherhood and like the depth of like feminine wisdom, she might be someone who everyone turns to, right? So it's kind of I think like also what you were saying, Rich, about like you might say, oh, I recognize I have power in this group in this way, and someone else might also disagree because at the same time it's the context is not like fixed, like not everyone sees the context in the same way. Like actually someone might say, oh, actually I don't think you do have the most power, and how do you navigate that? It's not black or white, but it's I think the point about power is not to get it right about who's got power and who doesn't, but to be able to talk about it. And I think that's what I like about what we're trying to do in our work, is make power a conversation that we can have, and allow for nuance and multiplicity within that, and recognize, okay, but that at some point there is an impact, and at some point we do have to hold a degree of accountability or responsibility to other people if they see us in a position of power. And there's something there, like there's inner skills in that of understanding how other people see you. I think it's called like interoception or something like that. And there's also like I think that's like one quality of holding power with integrity, is being able to actually understand whether the way you see yourself is the same as how other people see you, and also recognize that might not be the same thing for everybody.
Yeah, I think there's a few interesting things there around one thing you mentioned before, Rich, around like people have reactions to power, and I think that's one part of being able to hold power with integrity, is not being reactive to the reactions or as little as possible, and kind of being gracious with people's reactions, and helping them find their own power. Because often what happens to me when I feel like, oh, I'm like here with someone that's really powerful in whatever context it is, I can feel like really small and like I don't have any power because this person has it all. And that's also a skill to like be steady in your own power, even in the presence of other people that are also powerful or even more powerful. And this can manifest it like as still speaking up for yourself and not doing it from a place of like rebellion against the power, but in a kind of both and mindset, and like curiosity about what happens if I add my voice to the mix, and this kind of collaborative perspective. Yeah.
I would love to hear a few more like examples of like how we've experienced this personally. Were you going to say something similar, Rich?
I was going to say the same thing. Let's make it personal.
Yeah. I mean, I can speak to this last bit I brought, this rebelling against power, because for the last few years, I've been working very closely with a good friend of mine who's just way more experienced in our field of work. We are building a small NGO in Vienna, and he's just got like decades of experience doing this kind of work. He's been a community organizer for a long time, and I like in the beginning I was like, cool, let's do things together, and I was like trying to see each other on an eye level and as equals, and then I just came up against many points where he just had more insight or more experience or could like think further ahead because he just took a longer time perspective. Where I was playing like a 3-month game, he was playing a 5-year game. And it was really frustrating to me because I felt like all I can do is say, yes, you're right, and like I follow you wherever you go. And then parts of me were kind of rebelling against that and like finding reasons for why he's corrupt or where he's failing, so I can like feel better about myself. And it was only very recently that this dynamic resolved, and it was very like, or I don't know, maybe it comes back. It's possible that it has a little rebirth, but there was a long time when I was really struggling to feel, or like to see my place in this relationship and feel good about it. And I think what was happening was that I was kind of overestimating my own power a little bit. I was like thinking that I can do more already, or not accepting his offers for guidance. And since I've kind of said, okay, maybe there's something here, and this was a long process over a few months of coming to grips with where are my limitations, and can I focus within them so that they can grow, or like they can be pushed further out. That's really worked miraculously. Like Jocelyn, you brought this phrase once about focusing in your sphere of influence rather than your sphere of concern. Like there's many things that concern me and that I have ideas about, but there's a smaller circle within that that I can actually exercise some influence over. And focusing there and knowing like, okay, this is my comfort zone and this is my stretch zone and this is the panic zone, and kind of working in the stretch zone has really helped. Yeah. And sometimes part of me is still like, oh, I feel so incompetent. And then the work is just to be there for myself and like hold myself and be like, hey, well, like this is one perspective. I feel so incompetent. And what does it lead to? It leads to either giving up, or it leads to finding, like, coming back into rebellion so I can feel better about myself. And the thing that I do when I'm able to hold myself with integrity is to say, okay, there's a skill to learn here. And there's someone who's willing to accompany me on that journey. How great is that? Can I say yes to that? And yeah. And then things go really easily when I'm able to do that.
Yeah. When you say that, Jonas, it also makes me think back to the number of times I've really appreciated having you as like a peer. Like the two of us have known each other a couple of years, and it's felt like we've grown alongside each other. And I think we both have had that kind of situation where we've been like, oh, I'm working with someone who has more experience. Like I've had that also with Rich. You know, like Rich has been a mentor to me and to you for the last few years, and that's gradually changing to us becoming more like old peers, which is really sweet. And at the same time, like in that process, it's always been helpful to have had someone like you who could relate to my experience. I think in leadership, there's often something that can be really difficult when you feel like you're alone in your position, particularly the more leadership you gain, the more responsibility you're given, or more responsibility people presume you to have over their experience. You know, that's really nice to have other people who can relate to you being in that position, because it can feel kind of lonely and quite a lot of pressure, and people don't necessarily understand how that is when they are feeling like they're in less of a power position to you, which, I mean, that's a huge narrative, and particularly more of in like a lot of social justice teams, or in this, like the kind of lot of people we're working with are like interested in how do you empower people. And it's interesting, Alex has written something about victimhood. You know, it's also a topic I would be curious to touch on in a moment. Yeah, he's interested in the power and, in his opinion, lack of integrity of portraying yourself as a victim. Yeah, I don't know if Rich, you're going to pick up on anything that I mentioned there.
Well, just this portraying yourself as a victim. I was talking actually with Nati last night. She's been reading about power under, and we'll often talk about power over, but there's power under, which is this thing of portraying yourself as a victim, where you frame your identity, or you frame the conversation as the position of someone who has, like you were saying, Jonas, about being the rebel, like rebelling against an unjust authority, or that I've come in somehow on the back foot, that immediately gives you a kind of power. You kind of come in with extra points somehow, that you've got an extra, I guess you get righteousness points or something like that. Like, oh, you've been victimized, then definitely we need to listen to you and we need to take your concern seriously. And that's like often that's coming from a genuine place. Like, I actually have been victimized and we need redress. But it's also like subconsciously can be a power move, a way of like, I can see that there's people out there that are powerful, and I also want to be powerful. And this is one way to like equal the stakes somehow, is to like, go into that rebellion mode or that victimhood mode.
Mm.
And ideally, we're trying to cultivate an environment where everyone is moving towards something more like equality, where it's like, no, there's no one above or below the other. What were you about to say, Jocelyn?
I'm just going to highlight this like submit rebel thing that Jonas also mentioned. Like, there's a third thing in between that, but it takes conscientiousness of exactly. I think it's not that you can't complain about something or say, oh, I'm really having a hard time, I feel like less, like not very much in my power. But what do you do with that feeling is I think where the difference comes. Like, you could submit to it and be like, oh, poor me, or you rebel and like you fight against the unjust authority, or is there like a collaborative, generative third way? And like to, I don't know if Jonas, you were going in that direction. That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, I was going to pick up on a slightly different thread.
Go for it.
So if you want to keep exploring that one, do that, and I'll come back.
Then I go.
Okay,
I'm curious.
cool.
Okay, that's right. My curiosity is with you.
Yeah, because Rich, what you were saying now is like we're aiming to like level up our power so that we can be more alongside each other, and I think like that's somehow a mission that's close to my heart as well, is like empowering people. Sometimes I have a bit of a cringe reaction to that phrasing because it sounds like I'm giving them power, where actually what I'm doing is helping them see the power they already have and develop the skill of cultivating more and cultivating the skill of holding it with integrity at the same time. Anyway, there can be this like misconception or I think it's a misconception in me sometimes, that the goal is to always lead together and to like always be on an eye level. And I'm recently starting to question that a bit. And I'm like thinking about, well, like what's the benefit of always being on an eye level? And I know there can, like, I suspect there's some benefit there, but I know for sure that it also brings a whole lot of challenges with it. And I've been listening recently to an episode of the Life Itself podcast with Bonita Roy and Rufus Pollock, and she spoke about leadership too. And there was this question of like, what do you do when there's bad actors in a group? Like, who has the power to say what this group is and isn't? And I think that's like only one example where it's really important to have people that are kind of guarding the integrity of the whole, who are uniquely in touch with a vision of what this project is supposed to be, whatever it is, who can call the ultimate shot about, hey, sorry, but this is really going too far away. Like we can't go there. And that's not an eye level move. Like it's not possible to do that in an eye level relationship. That's always a power move. So that's like just a kind of open question myself at the moment. How, like, what are those relationships, and is it okay that one person or two or three people are just the, I don't know, the source or the kind of the hold an outsized amount of power and are also held accountable in proportion to that by the rest of the people, but who get to shape the direction more. And the goal is not that everyone will ultimately take part in that exercise. Like maybe the goal is to grow that circle to a certain point. But anyway, that's some questions that are coming up for me.
I know I don't want, when I go in for surgery, I don't want the surgeon to be negotiating with the other people in the surgery team to decide on what's the best approach. Like, I hope that the surgeon has taken advice and has been well trained and then is going to go in there and be decisive. And at the same time, I don't want the people in the team to be stuck in a posture of submission or coercion, or like, actually with surgery, and same with like high stakes things like flying planes and things like that. Like one of the improvements in safety in commercial airlines has been training the less empowered people in the hierarchy to disagree with the pilot and to be like, hey, this is an unsafe situation that we're heading into. I know you don't think it's so, but I also have experience, and I'm telling you, we need to raise the importance of this. Like in a strict hierarchy, you're trained to like keep your opinions to yourself, and it's better for everyone if you can have that degree of like open exchange. So I think for me now, the goal is not like everyone's on eye level necessarily, as in not that everyone has, not that the surgeon's knife is controlled by 6 hands holding onto it, but that everyone is at least raised above a certain threshold, and the threshold is like, my voice is important. I have something to contribute here. I have some autonomy, some agency. I can make choices about what's going on. And that, yeah, one of those choices is I'm going to follow you for a bit. I'm going to play this role that's operating in a smaller scope than this bigger thing that you're taking care of. And I can freely choose into that and do that enthusiastically. And actually, like you were describing, Jonas, about noticing your own constraints and your own limits, like actually it's a better developmental context for you if you can just focus on that territory, which is the right size for you to be learning in. Yeah, I want to be comfortable knowing that I've got a role to play that is operating at a different scale, or a different, that has a different level of responsibility. If I'm hosting an event, I've got more responsibility than the average guest. It's just the way it is. And I want every guest to cross that threshold where they're not in a posture of submission, they're not being coerced, but nor are they in control. They're not determining what the event looks like, and that, yeah, as I'm saying that, I'm like, I haven't really conceptualized this very cleanly. Like, what exactly is that threshold? What's involved? How do you get people over it? How do I know when I'm overstepping or demanding a kind of submission subconsciously?
When are you in integrity? I think that's the key point there in this whole exploration around what does it mean to hold power with integrity, is like getting good at noticing in yourself and outside of yourself, like the signals for overstepping, or the kind of the energetic pattern of, oh, I'm recognizing that there's a motivation playing here that actually doesn't feel clean. Like, I would rather not have that be part of the space, and be like, I don't want to be taking decisions about other people's lives from that place. And like getting good at then like taking breath and being like, okay, wait, how do I get back to center before I act? Yeah.
I think there's something like in how we're talking about it right now, which still is in this very like individualized paradigm of how you hold power. They're like, we're talking about, how do you know if you're not in it? And I think that's, again, going back to, it can be a lonely position if you think you have to do it alone. The value that I find in having company when you're in a power position is really important, like where you have peers who will give you feedback on, like, you said you wanted to be this kind of leader. I see you doing that. And people who are perceiving themselves as having less power probably not tell you that directly. Or but I think having peers like that is really important, but also creating, like, power is also created through structures of a group, and you can change the structures to allow feedback to come to you more easily, for example, or to allow people to more easily digest or like get support for the struggles they're having amongst each other. Like, we're from the micro solidarity framework of community building. We look a lot into forming crews where people have small peer support groups, where if they're having a challenge within the group, for example, when we're at a summer camp, or if we are part of a larger organization, it could be helpful to have small groups where people can air their frustrations in a group where the agreement is you're going to support each other to discover what is it that you need and how can we help you like activate your agency in a way that's helpful for you and actually helps others around us as well and makes the whole better. So I think there's like structural things to this around like holding your power with integrity, around feedback. Like make sure you got peers who will tell you, and make sure there are channels and channels for feedback to come to you from people less in power, and also support mechanisms for people to get support for themselves that doesn't rely on you having to give it to them all the time, but that they can articulate it and come to you in a power with kind of way. Then being like, this is not really cool. Maybe you're not seeing it. Me and my buddies in our group, we've been talking about this. And we had this idea. I want to bring it to you. Like, yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think what you're saying about just opening up the channels of feedback, making it easy, making sure that you're actually getting information coming in towards you, that you understand the influence that you're having, or the experience of people that would feel discouraged from sharing. And like you say, like having that passed through your trustworthy companions, because for me, a lot of the role of taking feedback as a leader has been ignoring feedback, like actually having the discernment to say like, oh wow, this person is venting. They're not actually giving me feedback about something I need to change. They're just like, I've reminded them of a bad experience they've had in the past, and they are using this as an opportunity to kind of like rehash that story, and it doesn't have anything to do with me. That's really, it's not easy to do that, and like I don't trust myself at all to make that call if it's just me looking at the feedback and going like, oh, I don't like that one. That's probably them just having their own workshop. I'll just ignore it. But like to triangulate with people that actually have shared context and common cause, and that like, yeah, that's to me is essential, is like having those relationships with people where if they say to me, dude, you're really out of line, then it's just going to land without a big defense mechanism coming up to say, oh, wow, fuck, I'm out of line. Okay. How am I going to straighten that out? Like, what do I need to do? And the average person in a group is not going to be that person for me. It's a very special role.
And it's important that those people don't have the exact same triggers as you, because otherwise, like, you just collectively agree that, yeah, all of these things are bad and all of these things are good. I think that's what happens in a lot of kind of progressive political spaces, is that people have the same, like, or a very similar perspective on what's good and not, and like what's acceptable behavior and what's not, so that things become rigid in a way, or like they become like trained towards like one direction. Because even though maybe you have peer relationships and people check in with each other, all they can see is the same image. There's not different angles on the same situation. Yeah.
I was thinking that one of the things I found most difficult, I basically think of it as like a protective instinct. That like, if we were playing around, and Jonas, you kind of like jab me in the stomach or something, we're like roughhousing. Obviously, there's going to be this immediate reflex to like crouch and duck or cover or push you away. There's this protective instinct. And when I'm in a leadership position in a group, it's like the whole group becomes my body to an extent, or I'm sort of entangled into that collective body. And there are parts of me that when conflict arises, or when there's a challenge, or when there's like, when it's obvious that someone's having a bad time, or when it's just like any lack of harmony in the group, there's parts of me that want to respond in the same way as if we were wrestling together and you just stabbed me in the stomach, and it's really challenging because it gives me intense feelings, and the intensity of feelings overrides my better judgment. But also, those intense feelings are because something really important is at stake. when I feel like the members of my organization are coming under attack in an unjust way, like there's a bulldog in me that really just wants to get savage, and it's a healthy instinct. And like, I think that, yeah, like especially in current times, there's so many groups that really have suffered a lot from not having the bulldog, from not having someone that's willing to like hold a hard line and say, we're not doing that. Like, this is not, you're in the wrong room. But like I said, it's also, when it's so intense, it's irrational. And I don't trust myself to exercise that aggression cleanly or skillfully. I guess we're back around to the thing about accountability and having companions, to like triangulate with. But the easy thing is just to like, oh, I'm really triggered, I'll get out of here. I don't want to say something I'll regret, or don't want to upset anyone. It's like, yeah, I'm triggered because of something crucially important. And it's yeah, no one trained me on what to do with my healthy aggression.
I guess the challenge for, like, I think a challenge in that also is that if with that approach of, I'm just gonna leave, like, this is too much. I hear that happening sometimes with leaders who just like, get me out of here, this is not my thing. And then there becomes like a leadership void. And it can sound like, when I'm saying that, I imagine it could sound like, oh, you have to stay as a leader. You can't like just give up and leave. And I think that's not exactly it. What I'm trying to say, I think it's like important to like be able to name the struggles coming up, like, and like be able to be human. And my question is, I don't know the answer to this, but like, can you create an environment where you can be allowed to be seen as having like challenges as a leader as well, and that when you're struggling, that there will be others who know how to step in and hold the, as you said, the boundary of like, this is what we're doing, this is not what we're doing, rather than what happens if it's done more without being communicated, like, hey, I'm actually stepping out a bit, is that inevitably a space gets filled by someone else with a different agenda, and then everyone in the rest of the team is like, whoa, what's going on? Like the leadership void challenge, like that a void will not stay a void for long. And, I find that an interesting question. How do you manage to have also wobbly moments as a leader, and not have this existential question about what will happen if it's not me, then who, kind of thing, and like, if I don't do it, no one will. All these like challenges and pressures in that position.
I'm willing for you all to disagree with me, but I'm like coming to the, like, unwillingly, or not with any enthusiasm, but coming to the conclusion that like when I have a leadership role, whether it's formal or informal, it's not actually helpful for me to be just straightforwardly vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like I've done it in organizations where people are looking to me for holding some of the vision, and then I say like, oh, I'm really out of touch with the vision and I don't know where we should go. And like, if I just blurt that out unskillfully, it demotivates people. It just like hampers everything. And it's not opening up a space where people are like, well, I know where we should go. Like, that's just not how it works for people. It's kind of like, you know how it feels when mommy and daddy are fighting, it's like, oh, there's something in the system that's really putting us all on edge. It's not an empowering, enabling experience. And it's been quite hard to learn as someone who like has these ideals about how we can all be equal and we can be open and let's be transparent about our feelings. So it seems like what's called for is a kind of tactical vulnerability. That's like a skillful disclosure of like, hey, I don't know exactly how to hold this role perfectly well, and I'm looking for your your consent to go along with this experiment, and this is what I'm holding and this is what I'm not. This is what I'm open for. This is how you can influence the situation that we're in. But to me, it takes a bit of strategizing and care about like, what am I disclosing, rather than just like being myself like that. Doesn't seem to serve the group when I do that. And that's been like counterintuitive to learn that.
Yeah. It's like you kind of have to hold a certain amount of certainty on behalf of other people, or like on behalf of the greater whole that you're part of. What I've found, though, like at the same time, that it can be really helpful to ease the kind of tension that can sometimes, like I've found myself in situations where I'm like working with someone that I'm leading them, like very clearly that's the agreement. I'm the kind of project lead and they're helping out, or they're like taking on one aspect of the project, and we're meeting and there's this expectation that I have all the answers and I know what to do and I'm going to tell them, or they're going to say some ideas and then I'm going to sort them through and be like, yeah, this is good, this is not. And sometimes I feel really like I'm like, I have ideas, but like let's find a more collaborative way of doing that and kind of disclosing where I am, what I have certainty about, and what is open to be shaped together in a way, like the way you described it, like this is up for grabs in a way, or this is where I want your input. That is really helpful, and it eases the kind of expectation, and people go like, right, so you don't know everything, okay, but you do know that thing, all right, okay, now I know what to work with. Like yeah. And at the same time, when I've seen people that I've consented to be led by share how it's for them, it's way easier for me to relate with them in a compassionate way and be like, right, I'm not like putting this all on you, because you're also a human. But this requires a certain amount of like trust and being like close somehow. This is more like a peer relationship than one person leading.
Yeah, that just made something click again for me. Like, yeah, that's right. I don't think it's helpful for me to be just straightforwardly transparent with all of my feelings when I'm in a leadership role. That's why I need to have companions that are outside of the organization, where I can be just straightforwardly messy and process what's going on, knowing that they're not directly implicated, where my like wobble in confidence isn't going to mean that they don't have a job next week. That's like, oh yeah, this is why we actually need to weave networks of peers that are like have different group affiliations. I felt good about throwing my memory back into situations that I've really struggled with as a leader. Makes me feel like the conversation is most alive, and I wonder if there's more of those in our shared history.
I know for me there was definitely different moments and different times of my life when I wasn't accepting my leadership, when I was like kind of wanting to have everyone be equals, or when I felt exposed or like overwhelmed with the idea of I'm actually holding this context, and there were times when it was also not possible for me to be like, hey, actually, I would like to take leadership here, because it wouldn't have been allowed by the others. But there's also been times when I was actively invited to lead, and I had already said yes to it without knowing what is all involved in that. And then just kind of subconsciously rejecting the parts that I didn't feel capable of, that were maybe a little bit beyond my stretch zone. And then noticing like what helped me get past that, because I was suffering in that moment, because I was seeing I'm not doing the thing that I said I would do. And what helped me get past that is just to really get very honest feedback from people around me and hear about the impact it has when I'm not showing up for the job I signed up for, and what it does to others, and their sense of security and orientation and how they feel about it. And that's like, it's really painful to admit that then in that moment, and be like, oh, that's what I've been doing. Holy shit, I've been making a big mess. But like through that discomfort, like the only way to get out of the discomfort is kind of through it, and to acknowledge, okay, these are my shortcomings, and then look at, am I willing to try again and like come back? And that's there's always been learning there in a way. Yeah. Where it's possible for people to really openly share. Don't be a dick. Start doing your job right. That's really important, to have that trusting relationship, even with people who are like, who have consented to be led.
It's not always super painful. Like, I'm just thinking about it a little while ago, Jonas, you gave me some feedback, and because you're skillful at it, it was sort of like it didn't land with any bruising. You know, you said something about how, hey, Rich, you know, you often communicate with a kind of irony that no one can interpret whether you're being earnest or ironic, and it's confusing. And I'm like, huh, fuck. Yeah, I do that, and I can see how, while that is very enjoyable for me to do, it doesn't serve our shared purpose at all. So sometimes you get lucky and you have these like skillful people around you that know how to hold a mirror up in a way that like actually is attentive to your defense mechanisms and everything, and just like, oh, okay, that wasn't humiliating, or just like a good update, like, oh, I need to know that, I need to think about that a bit more. I need to even be reminded about that, actually. I was wondering about you, Jocelyn. My experience of you has been, when I see you in front of groups, it seems like over the last few years you've been on this like consistent ramp of having a more and more like kind of straight spine and a louder voice and a sort of like deeper resonance in what you have to say. Like there's just this bearing that you've been cultivating, and I wonder, what that journey's been like.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you said what challenges have come up in our sort of shared collective, the three of us, I was like, I think my thoughts went much more easily towards, wow, what's been supportive for me as in my leadership journey with the both of you. I think it's felt like at summer camp or recently, I had this image of like I've never been surfing, but what it looks like is that you're on your board and when you wait for it, the wave comes and you sort of lift it up, and there's this like from underneath this lifting, and you're lifted forward and propelled. You still got to balance, like it's not like you're completely like you can just flop around. You know, it's not a paddling pool, but you've been given this swell, this momentum, and I'm trying to like articulate what gave me that, and it's partly being like seen, I think given like enough opportunities where someone like, and Rich, you've been very good at like somehow gauging where my challenge edge is. It's and like being like, here's an opportunity that I can hand over to Jocelyn. Maybe it's her thing. Like I remember the first time was 2 years ago in Belgium at the first Micro Solidarity gathering, where I was still like finding my feet with confidence and being a facilitator in front of groups. He said, why don't you introduce the open space, which is a group unconference tool that invites lots of people to co-create an agenda together for what they want to do with the time given a certain topic that they want to explore, or a question they want to explore together. And it requires a bit of like setting up a structure and telling people how it goes and inviting people to share their thoughts and opinions. And it can be a bit chaotic, but there's like instructions given about how one would do this, because many people have done it before. You gave me some tips and a website, and I was like, okay, I can read through that. And you're like, okay, go. And it was sort of a safe to fail place, and you were there also, and Nadia was there with like lots of experience and Carl, and like to just jump in if I needed anyone to fill in the gaps. So there's something about that that's been supportive. And also just like gradually developing my leadership skills by taking on larger and more risky or challenging projects that require more complexity of like understanding group dynamics. Yeah. But it's almost happened without me really noticing until you fed it back to me just at summer camp. Like, do you notice that your voice sounds different when you stand in front of people? It was like, huh. I almost denied it when you first said it. I was like, no, not me. I'm like, oh wait, you're right. People listen to me more. I went through such a frustrating phase of being like, I think, 2 years ago still, of wanting to bring my voice in, but just I think some internal sense of like lack of self-worth or confidence somehow reverberated into the space, and I would get very frustrated trying to get the group's attention or invite people to do something, and then no one literally hearing me, and then someone else would be like it could be Jonas or you, be like, okay guys, and then everyone would listen. I'd be like, why is this not working? What's happening that I don't get that? I guess like I can't like hold the attention. And it's not necessarily been through like difficult feedback that I've been able to hold my power more confidently. I think it's partly seeing role models doing that, and just I think gradually being also like, I think there's something very supportive about being celebrated in public. I think that's a big one for me. I know not everyone likes that, and sometimes it still feels edgy, but being like, oh, and then being recognized, oh yeah, you're someone who did that, and yeah, that's also been one. Yeah, there's been a journey of companionship about what are the values that I want to lead with, actually, and that's something I find it very difficult to navigate my own journey. I constantly have questions like, how am I showing up? Am I doing this right? Is there something I'm missing? What am I not seeing? And it just gives me a tremendous amount of reassurance and confidence and courage to know that there's like you guys and a bunch of other friends who are who would like let me know if I'm falling off the track. But more so, you're more like being sort of encouraging me, being like, that was really good. That was really good. I saw you do that. That was great. That was great. It's been super generative. So it's not always about feedback about what you shouldn't do, but it's also being seen for like, yeah, that you pulled off a cool move there. I saw what you did. Yeah. And being asked like, did you almost, I think, yeah, I've often been asked by people, like, did you see what you did? Can you articulate what you did? Rich, you asked that question quite a lot. Like, can you articulate what that move was and how you did it or how it felt? And it's almost like having someone mirror back how you're showing up and recognizing what you're doing so you can repeat the positive move and the helpful move again. Yeah.
Yeah, Jonas is also awesome at that, especially like spotting the move that just happened. It's like, nice move, bro.
Nice move.
Maybe this is just doing it again, but I was just curious if you could reframe that story as advice to someone, advice to Jocelyn of 2021. You're not super confident and you've got all this potential and it's not being activated. What should you do?
Yeah. It's like, what would I do that was different than what I did do? But yeah, have the companionship. Find the people whose leadership makes you feel good and try and emulate what they're doing. And also, this is a good one, like, if you like something that they're doing, ask them if they know that they're doing and how they came up with doing that, or like what's their thought pattern behind doing it. Like, there's a bunch of people who are like really good at asking interview questions, and I want to ask them like, how are you formulating those questions? Like, what goes through your mind? Yeah, or like, you're really good at like holding a conversation in which loads of people bring up interesting like responses like, what's your trick? Can you teach me? Yeah, I'm a very osmosis learner kind of thing. So I just like surrounding myself with the kind of models that excite me. Yeah. But definitely have companionship for the journey.
Yeah, the companionship thing for me is like actually look after your developmental context, like build the developmental context and then just relax and get on with it. But like if you haven't got the right context around you, like how would you expect to like suddenly magically find all this confidence?
Yeah.
It doesn't come from inside, I don't think. This is the weird thing you were saying, Jonas, about being empowering others. It's like, well, I'm not giving you power, but it is an interpersonal dynamic that's happening that it's navigating through all these difficult moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like kind of amplifying the good qualities that are already there and like kind of attuning to like, what do I see you do that's really good, and can I help uplift that in some way? And
yeah. Just sort of one more thing that I would want to tell myself, that part that got really annoyed when I couldn't capture the group's attention. To say like, start off smaller, like, and not bite off more than you could chew. Like if you're struggling to get 21 people's attention, like practice how do you do that in a group of 6. And I think I've learned through doing it in smaller groups where it's like, wait, it's a matter of listening to when it's the moment. There's like a feeling that I can more easily sense in a small group than a big group, or just recognizing how my posture or my position in the group would affect how people listen to me, or just when it's the right time for me to contribute something, the people are actually ready to listen, or like giving people a preamble, like, okay, in 5 minutes, I'm going to wrap this up, like this kind of thing. Like try experiments in a small group so that when you're trying in a big group, it's not like, you can still do it in a small group. You just got to like figure out how to lock that onto a bigger group first. Yeah.
It's just sweet to imagine people listening or watching and taking home some good tips. Like I really just want to be surrounded by people that are on their version of that journey, whatever that is, this kind of like activating your own brilliance or activating your agency and getting to that, there's the first stage of agency, which is like, you can just do things, you can have an influence on the world. But then pretty quickly you start reaching that second stage, which is like, oh, you're going to have to do that with people. And like, sometimes you're going to be the center of gravity that holds those people together and keeps them on task. Like, I would just love to be surrounded by people that felt easy with that role, that doesn't have to form their identity or like be the biggest part of their life, but that they know at times, I can lead the band, it's like, it's my song. And then I can relax again and take it easy. Like I've had times where I've been surrounded by people like that with that level of not just agency, but sort of collaborative leadership capacity as well. And it feels awesome. It just feels like so much power there, right? Like we're so potent when we got those around us.
What's taking in your mind, Jonas? I can see your thinking face.
No, I'm just like kind of letting things pass through me, because now we've been talking about like the stories you were telling, Jocelyn, are I think a lot about like leadership as in leading a group in a group process or in a gathering or training, and I was like kind of drawing parallels between that and being in an organization or like leading a longer term project. And one parallel that came to me is like, for practicing small is like, don't like think about what's your capacity to hold someone else's learning process. Like, can you hold 3 people's learning process at the same time? Like when you're trying to grow a team, or is it okay to just take your time with one person until you're like solid together, and then expand from there? And like, like sometimes there can be this impulse to like go big or go home. And I'm guilty of this too. Like I'm very impatient sometimes, and feel like it needs to happen all at the same time. But what I've really come to appreciate about the organization that I'm working with now is that, like, especially one person is holding this long perspective of, like, if we don't take our time now, it's going to come back to bite us later, because I don't know how to do this. You don't know how to do this. We're all learning right now. Like, how much bandwidth do we have for learning and for building structures that support us going forward, and that kind of ingrain the principles and values that we care about together in a structure that makes sense. And how much bandwidth do we have for changing that structure as it needs to? And like, just kind of bringing time into the equation. And I know it's hard when it feels like the world's on fire and like everything feels urgent and like it should have happened yesterday. And like, there's some, I don't know, almost grief work there to do as well. It's like, I can't. This is all the potential that I have right now available to me. Like, I can lie to myself and think I have more, but that's not going to lead to the outcomes I want to see. So I can mourn that I don't have more hours in a day. But
The good thing is about getting older, I think you just naturally, the urgency falls away. It's just something about, like, it's just, but this is not something I've had to work on. It's just kind of happened. As an old person.
So old.
I was just wondering, I had this phrase come to my mind when I was on the train today, nervous system leadership. And I wondered how much you two have thought about how your nervous system state, what your level of activation is, and how what influence you have on the group.
Yeah.
Is that a thing you think about?
Yeah, it's a pity we have like vertical screens, because I need more of a horizontal one to be like this much. This much. Thanks. Magic. Oh, you have such power.
Power of television.
So much. I mean, at the last summer camp, the Micro Solidarity Summer Camp, like, you have 50 people so together for a week. Of course, you're going to have the conflict arise at some point. You're almost expecting it. And I knew that the most important thing for me to do in that moment was to feel like spacious. And I teach mediation skills, and I always use this analogy of, like, can you be the empty bucket when everyone else's bucket is too full and everyone's trying to pour their message or their hurt or their pain or their story into each other, and it's all splashing over into reactivity. Like, to be the empty bucket is, for me, one of the most important leadership qualities to start with, because if you're overflowing, like, and people are looking to you, it's really hard. And so having an empty bucket, being able to keep coming back to peers, have peers to help you empty your bucket. So, have emotional hygiene and like your internal hygiene, that you can stay open and spacious for the unknown, for uncertain times. You're bound to face uncertain times and chaos, and things are not going to go well all the time. How can you almost preempt that and have the structures and support around you that you're going to be able to, even if you do get full, sometimes empty yourself reasonably quickly. You don't have to do it on your own. That's really hard. Like, co-regulation is way easier for me than trying to do it by myself. So being able to regulate your nervous system seems like super important.
Yeah, for me too. Like that's very present every day. Like, how can I show up to this meeting in a state that I can do what's needed? And like that doesn't mean like being super well prepared content wise most of the time. Like, that's also part of it. But how can I be in a state where I'm open-hearted and curious about what's happening, even if other people are having strong reactions? And And another thing that I've been thinking about recently is nervous system leadership in kind of designing processes and structures that are nervous system friendly, and that help others to stay more regulated. Like that's one way of exercising leadership, is like when someone's like, yeah, let's schedule a 4-hour meeting to do this, all of this work. And it's like, yeah, okay, like, how about we do a 90-minute session and then another 90-minute session in the afternoon? Like, or like just these simple things of like designing for regeneration and spaciousness. And like recently we had a discussion at Civil Action Network, the organization I've been referencing, about like, do we want to take time off together, like where everyone's on holiday over the summer for like a few weeks, and there was like a lot of back and forth, and then we actually settled on, yes, we want to do that, and we want to do it not just for 1 week, but for like 2 to 3 weeks, because that's how much time the nervous system really needs to like come down from intense engagement, and for rest, like deep rest, to actually happen. And it's like just these things of like helping each other and setting up structures that allow for regulated nervous systems. And regulated nervous systems are important because only then can we take informed choices and not act out of like learned fear, protection behavior. So yes, to make a long story short, yes, I think about it a lot.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. I was just, when you're talking about the empty bucket, Jocelyn, like on the one hand, like what a beautiful vision and what a gift to give people, you know, that receptivity and that capacity and spaciousness. And also how lonely that can be, you know, like that has been such a brutal lesson to learn, that sometimes when I'm creating a space for other people, I don't get to benefit from it. You know, like I'm fully occupied just holding up the outer boundary of that bucket, and I don't, you know, I sometimes I have this picture in my head of like holding up a swimming pool so that all my friends can go swimming inside the pool, but like I can't get into it. And again, it's like this seems to be the thing that just keeps coming back around and around this conversation, is that having the right peers, where I can get into someone else's swimming pool and remember what it's like. I mean, I remember last summer I went to Jess camp, and Jess explicitly invited me, saying, you are not taking any responsibilities here. You're here to relax. You're an organizer. You have the red carpet. You do what you want, and you don't contribute anything more than you want. And it was just so delicious and like nourishing and regenerative to like be invited into someone else's pool for a bit and not have to take on any kind of special role. It's amazing.
Maybe I should book myself in. Yeah, nice one. We're coming up to like just over an hour, and I'm kind of sensing maybe it's nice to start wrapping up. Is there, what kind of, is there anything you both want to bring in to sort of tie anything together, or as a final nod to the topic for now? Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. No, it's there's nothing really alive. There's just this feeling of gratitude that I have the opportunity to be on this developmental pathway with others, and like I kind of want to encourage people to find where do you already have opportunity to kind of play with this, and really, I mean, play, like design experiments that are safe to fail, where nothing serious can go wrong, and just like see what it's like. Or if you're already kind of leading in an intense environment, can you like intentionally design spaces where it's okay to like Rich was saying, where you can relax, or if you want to kind of sharpen up some skills where you really can explore, and if you have a challenge, can you get together some people to be a sounding board, or I think it's really important to keep a sense of like lightness around this. And I like the metaphor of a dance, like comes up for me quite often. It's like dancing with power and like and other people, and like who steps into leadership when, and like who's kind of doing the dance move that then everyone copies across the whole dance floor, and like these kinds of things.
Yeah, it's fun and it's playful when you're dancing together, right? Like when I think about the stuff that I've struggled with, it's always come down to not having the right companions. I think as you were asking him, Jocelyn, like what's kind of last thoughts on my mind, it's about having this how awesome it is. Like actually it's pride, I think, is what's coming up for me, the sense of like actually like the three of us and our crew of close collaborators and the wider network of people around us. Like I think we are tuned into something really cool about how to do leadership in a way that is empowering and creative and good for the world and good for us, and like just how awesome it feels to be on that developmental pathway that a lot of the time does feel playful, a lot of the time it feels important, like how satisfying it is to have that. And just kind of wanting to invite people in, that anyone's hearing this going, oh, I wish I had more of that. Anyone that's feeling leadership loneliness, come and hang with us, and it's like hang with us on Twitter informally and let us know what's going on for you. Like all of us love talking about this kind of stuff, and just like get up and reply to us on Twitter and ask us questions, and like we just love geeking out on this thing. And also join us with starting a program next year. I wonder if either of you want to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. This conversation has been great for me. It's like we're ramping up. I actually just published it today on the Hum website, into ramping up into a group coaching program which starts in the new year. I think on 30th of January. It's called In Good Company. I mean, it's great. We just keep coming back to like just have good companionship around you. It's like so helpful. And it's like an 8-week group coaching program, which is Rich just put the link in the chat there. That's great. You get us there every other week as your sort of coaches, and anyone in the session can bring a leadership challenge that they're facing. And really we're looking for people to join us who are wanting to hold their power with integrity and discover like what is it that are their leadership aspirations, and shine the light on what the blockages to that, and find creative ways to show up in the way that feels right for you and really good for your team. It empowers people in your team to follow you in a shared vision and co-create that shared vision together with you. It's not easy, and the value of it is really having each other. So on the other weeks, we actually will introduce some really cool frameworks and structures for peer coaching and coaching one another. And that really, like Jonas and I did a similar program last year. We called it Make It Rain, for people wanting to create a project. And it was just really beautiful seeing how people felt a sense of companionship and real friends along the path into the unknown, and in that no longer have it feeling such a loneliness in their position around being a sort of someone striding out into the horizon, into something that they feel calls their heart. And so I'm hoping that we can get a really cool group of people who want to jam with us and that, and become good company for one another. Do either of you want to add anything else that I missed about the program? Or did I ace it?
You aced it. In my ears, you aced it.
Amazing. Cool. Yeah. Then I feel maybe it's time to wrap it up. Yeah. Thanks both of you. Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening if you're listening in, and hope to stay in touch. Bye.